My name is Caleb Myers. I'm 42, divorced, and until last year, I was the director of user research at ArcLight Interactive. If you've ever used a productivity app with bright gradients and useless pop-ups begging for feedback, chances are it came out of ArcLight. We didn't design tools, we designed dopamine loops. I'd been with them since the early days, back when our whole office was a converted bakery in Portland, and our biggest client was a time-tracking tool for freelancers. I helped shape the entire UX philosophy of the company, built the first usability lab from scratch, hired and trained a research team that was known across the industry. I even wrote the testing protocols most of our competitors now mimic. None of that mattered when the new VP of Product, Ethan Ford, got hired. Ethan was young, Harvard MBA, crisp white sneakers, always talking about velocity and data wins. He didn't believe in qualitative research, said user interviews were biased, said A/B tests told you everything you needed to know. I kept my head down and did the work, but I saw the shift coming. It started with budget freezes, then the quarterly strategy meetings where my department wasn't invited. One day the research Slack channel disappeared, consolidated under product. The email said, that was the beginning of the end. They called it a strategic pivot, said generative AI could handle user research more efficiently than people. Ethan demoed a shiny new LLM tool called Vera. Supposedly it could simulate user feedback using massive behavioral datasets and predictive modeling. They called it a revolution. I called it fantasy. 2 weeks later, my entire team was laid off. 37 people, no warnings, just calendar invites, HR and legal in the room, Ethan's smug face on Zoom. My turn came last. He had the nerve to say, "You're one of the good ones, Caleb. But we need to be forward-looking. The AI gives us scale and speed." I didn't argue, I didn't beg. I signed the papers, 12-week severance, NDA included. I shook his hand. It was cold, damp, weak grip. I walked out with my coffee mug and the old notebooks I'd kept since the bakery days. Sketches, insights, raw interview notes. Nobody else ever read. I didn't know why I took them at the time, but I'm glad I did. I spent the first week walking my dog, canceling subscriptions and trying not to open LinkedIn. Catherine, my ex, called and offered some version of sympathy, the kind you give to someone who's lost a pet. You'll land on your feet, you always do. But I didn't want to land, not yet. I wanted to watch the ground rise up and crush the thing that pushed me out. It started with a tweet. A UX designer from a small fintech startup complained about a broken onboarding flow in one of ArcLight's new products, said the AI-generated copy made no sense, that the prompts were circular, contradictory, and gave users a headache. That got picked up by a few design blogs. Then a thread popped up on Designer Humans, one of those niche forums where product folks go to vent. Apparently several startups that had licensed ArcLight's Vera-based UX framework were quietly scrapping it. User drop-off was spiking, retention had cratered. I took notes, just for myself, just to see. Then came the job offer from Luma Bridge, a mid-sized competitor. They made project management tools for non-profits. Practical stuff, unsexy, but they had heart. Their VP of Product, Adriana Wu, reached out direct. She said, "We've been watching ArcLight crash into its own hubris. We could use someone who knows how to do research the right way." I took the meeting, told her I wasn't ready for full-time. She offered a contract instead, said, "Help us design our new platform rollout, 6-month term, work remote, run it your way." I said yes, but I didn't stop watching ArcLight. I built a mirror system. Every time a new product of theirs launched, I signed up. I tracked user flows, screen recorded every step, cross-referenced error messages, even ran mock interviews with testers I paid out of pocket. I wasn't spying, I wasn't stealing, I was studying a disease, watching it spread. The AI-generated interfaces got worse with each iteration, tone-deaf copy, broken logic, features layered without context. It was like watching a building collapse floor by floor because the architect forgot what people actually needed. Clients noticed. How do I know? Because they started calling me. Some had worked with me during ArcLight's rise, others had heard my name passed around after the layoff. They didn't care that I'd signed an NDA. They weren't asking for trade secrets, they just wanted help. One of them, Sparrow, was preparing to pull their $2 million annual contract from ArcLight. I met their CTO for coffee, listened as he vented about a product they couldn't fix, users they were losing, and a partner company that no longer answered support tickets. I didn't pitch myself, I just listened, gave him some ideas, told him what real research looks like. He left with a napkin full of notes and my burner email address. 3 weeks later, I got a formal proposal in my inbox. Sparrow wanted LumaBridge to take over their product development, and they wanted me on the project. That's when the plan started forming. Not sabotage, not theft, redirection. ArcLight had abandoned what made them strong. They didn't understand users anymore. I did, and the industry was starting to remember why that mattered. I compiled a report for Adriana at LumaBridge, called it User-Centered Recovery, Opportunities Post-Automation Collapse. She read it in silence, then said, "How fast can we move?" I smiled. Already started. I recruited 2 former colleagues, researchers ArcLight had let go, gave them freelance contracts. Together we rebuilt the testing protocol we once used for multi-million-dollar launch, only now we aimed it straight at the gaps ArcLight's automation couldn't fill. Our early findings were damning. 73% of users described ArcLight's onboarding as confusing or robotic. 58% said they couldn't find core features without external help. 81% said they didn't trust the app to store their data properly, because the prompts were too vague. We presented our findings to Sparrow, then to 2 other clients who'd also lost confidence in ArcLight, then to Adriana's board. The board asked one question: can we scale? I nodded, easily. What happened next wasn't revenge, it was restoration. But I won't lie. Every call I got from a former ArcLight client ready to switch sides felt like a tally mark. Vera's failure wasn't about technology, it was about arrogance. They believed a system could replace empathy, that statistics could replicate curiosity, that pattern matching could outthink actual human understanding. But that's not how users work. They change, they adapt, they surprise you. That's the whole point of research. You don't get to replace it with a guess, no matter how shiny your algorithm is. I don't need ArcLight to collapse. I just need it to be seen for what it really is. Feedback cycles were tight, precise, and most importantly human. We didn't just ask what users clicked, we asked why. We watched their expressions. We listened to the silence between their answers. I ran weekly playback sessions with Adriana and her team. We'd review clips, dissect body language, voice inflections. One session, a user squinted slightly before clicking the submit button. That led to a full redesign of our confirmation UI, not because she said something, but because she hesitated. That kind of insight doesn't show up in A/B tests. Meanwhile, ArcLight pushed forward with blind optimism. Vera 2.0 launched with a PR blitz, full-page ad in Wired. The future of UX is AI first. Ethan Ford gave a keynote where he actually said, "Human bias is the last barrier to true scalability." The irony wasn't lost on me. That same week, one of our LumaBridge beta testers shared a screenshot. It was from an ArcLight product onboarding flow for a new mental health journaling app. The AI-generated prompt read, "Sometimes emotions are invalid. That's okay. Log them anyway." I stared at that sentence for a long time. They didn't just break UX rules, they broke people. Sparrow officially pulled out of their contract the next morning. The fallout made headlines. Top client ditches ArcLight over AI woes. TechWatch ran a story quoting unnamed insiders who claimed morale had cratered, and Ethan was reportedly micromanaging dev teams trying to reverse engineer empathy. I didn't gloat, but I printed that article and pinned it above my desk. I was no longer freelancing. Adriana brought me on full-time, Senior Director of Experience Strategy. The title didn't matter. What mattered was that we were building things that worked, because we remembered people were more than data points. Then something unexpected happened. I got an email from an old contact inside ArcLight. Subject: "You didn't hear this from me." It was short, 1 paragraph, no sign-off. "Ethan's looking for someone to fix the optics. He knows you're behind the Sparrow loss. He's pissed. Legal's watching your moves. Be smart." I read it twice, then deleted it. The threat wasn't surprising, but it clarified something. This wasn't just about good UX anymore. It was a quiet war. Old systems versus real understanding. Algorithmic arrogance versus lived experience. And Ethan had just made it personal. I met with Adriana that afternoon and laid out a proposal. Strategic, targeted, not attack, but illumination. Make the gaps visible, not to ArcLight, but to everyone else. She listened, then nodded.
Let's make it clean. Let's make it real. We launched a series of open case studies, not hit pieces, just structured feedback from users who had tried both systems. Vera designed flows versus our human-led design alternatives. We anonymized everything, followed every NDA to the letter, but the results spoke for themselves. Completion rates, 62% higher with human-led flow. Reported trust, 147% in favor of our models. Long-term retention 4x higher on our platforms. We published these as white papers, neutral tone, academic formatting, no logos, no names, just data and methodology. The industry took notice. I started getting invitations to speak again. Panels, webinars, even a keynote at a major design conference. I declined most of them. I wasn't interested in fame, just momentum. But I accepted one, a closed-door roundtable for enterprise product leads. I walked in wearing a gray button-down, no slides, just a notebook and a pen. I opened with one question. When did we decide people were too inefficient to care about? The room went silent, and just like that, things shifted. Other companies started reaching out, asking how to rebuild what they'd dismantled in the rush to automate. Some wanted to poach our team, others just wanted guidance. I offered something better. Partnership. LumaBridge launched a new division, embedded research partnerships. We'd lend our researchers to external teams to teach them how to listen again. We didn't sell a product, we taught a process. It worked. One by one, ArcLight's clients slipped away. Quiet exits, no press, just absence. And then I got another email, this one from Ethan. Subject: coffee. I stared at it for a long time. He asked to meet off the record, said he respected the work we'd done, wanted to clear the air. I didn't reply for 3 days. Then I said yes. We met at a minimalist cafe downtown. White tile, black coffee. No music. He wore a quarter zip and that fake relaxed smile he always used when cameras were around. Caleb, he said like we were old friends. I nodded, didn't shake his hand. He sat, took a sip, got to the point. You've done some impressive work. Really, you've challenged a lot of assumptions. I waited. I'd like to bring you in as an advisor, he continued. Help us recenter, fix what's broken. I blinked slowly. You fired 37 researchers and replaced them with code that couldn't even spell compassion. He smiled. Tight. We moved too fast. I see that now. The board sees it too. I leaned back. What's the offer? He brightened. Consulting, 6-month retain, double what you made before. I paused, then said the one thing I'd rehearsed. You want me to come fix the house you burned down with the people still inside? His face twitched. I'm not interested, I said. Ethan shifted in his seat. Don't be short-sighted. You could shape the future of ArcLight. I stood up. I already am, just not from inside. As I walked out I felt no triumph, no glee, just confirmation. He wasn't offering a second chance. He was begging for rescue. But I don't do rescues. Not for people who lit the match. Not for the ones who called empathy obsolete. Outside the sky was overcast. Soft rain fell as I walked to my car. I opened my notebook, made one final entry for the day. They're coming apart quietly now. No need to push. Just wait. Because sometimes revenge isn't fire. Sometimes it's gravity. You just have to let the tower fall. 3 months after that meeting with Ethan, ArcLight announced an internal restructuring. No fanfare, just a generic press release filled with phrases like realignment and operational refocus. The article didn't mention layoffs, but I knew. People started reaching out again, one by one. Sarah, the lead content strategist they hired after gutting my team, gone. Raj, the last in-house researcher, forced out. The PMs who used to roll their eyes when we brought up user friction, now quietly begging for help redesigning flows. They'd built a machine with no memory, and now they were paying for it. Meanwhile, LumaBridge was in the middle of a hiring wave. We weren't just onboarding new clients. We were absorbing teams, people with talent, experience, and bruises, people who still believed in asking questions before pushing features. Adriana called it a quiet coup. I didn't disagree. Every Friday I hosted what we started calling the playback room. No slides, no demos, just recorded sessions of real users struggling, succeeding, talking through their lives as they interacted with our tools. We watched as a team, designers, engineers, executives. Nobody checked email during playback. It was sacred, the kind of space I used to fight for, the kind of space ArcLight had erased. I remember one session clearly. A middle-aged veteran named David was testing a beta feature for project coordination. Halfway through the task, he stopped and rubbed his eyes. This reminds me of the army, he said quietly. Only thing that worked back then was people watching out for each other. Doesn't matter how efficient the system is if no one knows what you need. The room went still. Someone sniffed. A PM wiped his glasses, and I wrote down one sentence. Build like someone's depending on it. That became our motto, not officially, but people started whispering it in the hallways, printing it on post-its, scribbling it on whiteboards. It spread. A month later, ArcLight's stock dipped, just 2%, but enough to make analysts nervous. Word leaked that several enterprise clients were evaluating alternatives. I didn't need names. I had the email threads, the calendar invites. They were already ours. Still, I didn't celebrate. That wasn't the point. The point was what came next. Luma Bridge had just closed a deal with Navitech, a major government contractor. Their apps handled scheduling for emergency medical response teams across 5 states. The stakes were real. Lives depended on. Adriana pulled me aside before kickoff. "This one matters," she said. I nodded. "I know." We ran 2 full discovery cycles before touching a single screen, talked to dispatchers, field medics, admin staff. We didn't ask what buttons they need. We asked what scared them during a bad day. Their answers shaped everything. Color coding that could be read through stress-fogged eyes, button spacing designed for gloves, alerts that pulsed instead of dinged. Because sudden sounds can spike cortisol. Vera would have never caught that. Because people don't report what they don't know how to name. That launch was the cleanest in company history. Not a single rollback, not one crash report in week 1. Navitech extended our contract within 72 hours, and then the email came from Trevor Denton, chairman of the board at ArcLight. Short, formal, cold. He was exploring transition consulting arrangements, wanted to leverage my institutional knowledge, requested a meeting. I declined. 3 days later, a recruiter called, said she was retained by ArcLight to assess market perceptions, asked if I'd be willing to share feedback on their recent brand positioning. I laughed, actually laughed, then said, "Sure." We scheduled a 30-minute call. I didn't sugarcoat anything. Told her exactly what happened when you treat humans like variables, when you discard knowledge in favor of noise, when you assume algorithms can care. She thanked me, sounded tired. At the end she asked one last question. "If they offered you control of product, would you consider returning?" I paused. "No, not even to fix it. It's not fixable. They don't need a new leader. They need a reckoning." That weekend I visited the coast. First time off-grid in months. No Slack, no email, just a cabin, a journal, and the sound of waves slapping cold sand. I wrote a single line that night. "This isn't revenge anymore. It's evolution." When I got back, Adriana met me in the hallway. "We're expanding again," she said. "Europe this time. Berlin team needs a lead strategist." I didn't hesitate. "Let's do it." Because the best way to prove they were wrong was to show what right looks like, not in a press release, but in code that cared.
The Berlin rollout changed everything. Not because it was bigger, because it was different. The EU's stricter data regulations meant we couldn't just rely on analytics. We had to go back to basics, direct interviews, field studies, paper sketches. I flew out with Marta, our lead ethnographer, and spent 10 days shadowing municipal workers who used scheduling tools for sanitation and public works. One man, Kaspar, ran 3 crews out of a shared tablet. He showed me how the lag in ArcLight's platform meant one snowplow route ran 20 minutes late every Thursday, causing a bottleneck that affected 8 neighborhoods. Vera had labeled it with unacceptable variance. Kaspar called it 8 blocks of pissed-off commuters. That was all I needed. We rebuilt the feature from scratch. No AI, no shortcuts, just logic, testing and input from the people who actually used the damn thing. Launch day, Kaspar sent a photo, him standing next to a plowed street with a thumbs up and a caption, "No more Thursday drama." That one went on the wall. Back home, ArcLight was flailing. Another VP resigned. Investors started asking hard questions during earnings calls. Ethan was still clinging to the AI narrative, blaming execution and rollout strategies, not the premise itself. But cracks were visible now. Public reviews, open criticism from former partners, design leaders who once praised ArcLight were distancing themselves. I saw their LinkedIn posts, carefully worded, quietly damning. Then came the whistleblower. A former engineer leaked documents to TechWatch. Internal reports showed that Vera's learning models had been recycling synthetic feedback, resulting in decision loops that spiraled into design nonsense. Worse, no one at ArcLight noticed for 2 months because there were no humans left to flag it. The story broke big, and this time, it stuck. Adriana called me into her office the next day, closed the door. "They've reached out again," she said, sliding her phone across the desk. It was a text from Trevor Denton. "We're ready to talk. No PR, no posturing, Just survival. I leaned back. You believe them? She shrugged. I believe they're drowning. What do they want? To be acquired? I said nothing. Then she added, they want you to run the integration if we do it. I stared at the wall for a full 30 seconds, then said, no deal unless we pick what we keep. And what we burn. Adriana smiled. I already told them that. We sent a team to do due diligence. They came back with a 50-page breakdown. Of the 12 ArcLight employees still on payroll, only 94 were in roles we considered essential. Of those, 37 were former colleagues I'd personally vouched for during our first run. The rest were excess. Middle managers, marketing fluff. 3 separate people, titled AI Experience Evangelist. We offered to absorb the assets, the infra, the IP, not the culture, not the narrative. Trevor agreed. He didn't have a choice. 2 weeks later, I stood in the ArcLight lobby again, the same building I'd walked out of with a mug and a notebook. The same sterile halls, same brushed metal signs, but it felt different now. Quieter. I was leading the transition, not as a returning employee, as the architect of its replacement. I called an all-hands the first Monday. No slides, just a circle of chairs in what used to be their innovation lab. I said one thing. If you're here, it means you're worth keeping, but the way we work is going to change. No more guesswork, no more pretending algorithms care. We listen, we test, we prove, or we don't ship. There were nods, there were tears, there was silence, but nobody walked out. Over the next 2 months, we rebuilt the skeleton of ArcLight stack, refactored codebases, rewrote onboarding flows, retrained PMs to ask real questions, taught engineers how to run field tests. It was brutal, but it was honest. Vera got archived, not deleted, just boxed, like an artifact. We printed a sign and taped it to the server rack. Here lies hubris, may it rest on you. The team started laughing again, not the nervous kind, the earned kind. Late one Friday, I got a call. Blocked number. I let it go to voicemail. Listened to it in my car before heading home. Ethan. Caleb. I heard, guess you won. I hope it feels worth it. I deleted it, not out of anger. Out of mercy, because it never was about winning. It was about proving that research isn't dead, that care isn't inefficient, that people remember who listens and who disappears when the room goes quiet. At our next playback room, someone asked if we'd ever publish a memoir of what happened. I said no, but maybe one day I'll leave a note somewhere. Something simple, like, we were here, and we paid attention. We didn't announce it. We just stopped using the name. Emails switched to LumaBridge domains. Documentation was merged. The old logo came down from the Portland office. No ceremony, just a quiet removal, like washing off something that had dried wrong. I kept the notebook, the ones I'd taken that day. They let me go. They sit on the shelf in my new office, just behind me, visible during calls. I don't mention them, but people ask, and I say, those are reminders. We launched a new initiative last quarter. Human Insight Academy, not a training program. Our philosophy, every new hire, regardless of role, spends 1 week shadowing a user interview. Doesn't matter if you're in finance or back-end. You listen, you document, you learn. We built something bigger than a company. We built memory into the foundation. Meanwhile, the design world shifted. The same firms that once chased synthetic insight started circling back. Agencies reached out asking how we structured our playback sessions. Universities emailed for copies of our research templates. We open-sourced them, because none of this works in isolation. I got invited to speak at a global UX summit in New York. This time I accepted, not for ego, for signal. The room was full of designers, researchers, founders. I walked on stage. No slides, no notes, just one sentence. Empathy doesn't scale, but trust does. Then I told them the story, not of revenge, of return. How we came back from a system that forgot to care. How people, not data, became the differentiator again. I didn't name names, didn't call out Ethan, didn't mention ArcLight, but they knew. After the talk, people lined up. Some just said thanks, some cried. One young designer said, I stayed in this field because of what I heard you did. I needed to know it still mattered. That night, I sat on the hotel rooftop, with a glass of something dark, phone buzzing with messages from the team. One stood out. Elaine, our new research lead in London.
Client said it's like someone finally read their mind. Good work, boss. I typed back. No magic, just listening, and I meant it, because here's what they never understood. The future isn't automated, it's aware. And aware, that starts with someone asking the right question. And staying quiet long enough to hear the answer. We didn't win because we moved faster. We won because we stood still and paid attention while everyone else sprinted past. Because truth isn't found in dashboards, it's found in pauses, in hesitations, in the moment a user sighs before clicking the wrong thing, and says under their breath, "Why is this so hard?" That's where real design lives, where real impact starts, in the sighs and the silences. So no, I didn't get revenge. I got relevance, and that lasts longer.